Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine. Here to bring you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is going to the evening of January 18, 2024 in the United States, the morning of January 19, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, the medical deal, the transfer of medicines to hostages through Qatar in exchange for Israel increasing the amount of medicines that enter the Gaza Strip, began yesterday. Today, a spokesperson for Qatari Foreign Ministry stated that while it is likely that the medicines that entered the Gaza Strip did in fact reach the hostages, Qatar cannot confirm this due to the media and internet blackout that the Gaza Strip is experiencing. The IDF also stated that it has no way to confirm if the medicines in fact got to the hostages. Prime Minister Netanyahu responded to this later on in the day, stating that the deal includes the negotiators' guarantees, i.e. Qatar's guarantees, and that sooner or later we will know if the medicines reach their destinations. I will add that Israel had demanded initially to have either live footage guarantees or some other mechanism to ensure that the hostages do in fact get the medicines. However, as the deal developed, Prime Minister Netanyahu handled the deal himself and did not actually incorporate Minister Gantz or the IDF in the deal, and thus most of the details about what was supposed to happen have not been published. Today, Qatar said that involving Palestinian Red Crescent or the United Nations or the Red Cross is not possible due to Hamas's conditions, and thus right now it is unclear what guarantees were supposed to be in place for the hostages to actually receive their medications, but what is for sure is that Qatar is saying that they cannot guarantee that the medicines actually did reach the hostages. Moving on to the ongoing fighting in the Gaza Strip, rockets and mortars were sent from the Gaza Strip targeting the areas surrounding the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, although much fewer than in recent days. Rockets targeted primarily the areas of Nir Oz and Nirim. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip itself, the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, IDF activity was reported in several different neighborhoods of Gaza City, in one case targeting a structure in which the Palestinian Islamic Jihad operatives were held up. Al-Qassam Brigade stated that they engaged IDF forces both in Jabalia refugee camp and in Gaza City's Tufah neighborhood, as well as in the Sheikh Ejlin area. The group also stated that it fired mortars at IDF troops and detonated a rig tunnel, telling us that there is still a lot of ongoing fighting going on in different pockets of resistance in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. In Gaza City, Al-Isra University was detonated today by the IDF and most of the building destroyed. According to reports, the building had been taken over by the IDF for the last 70 days and had been used as an ad hoc detention facility for interrogating Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and determining if they are going to be sent back to Israel or be released in the Gaza Strip. After it was evacuated today, it was detonated by the IDF. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, the IDF reported that it uncovered and destroyed what is considered Hamas's main weapons manufacturing compound near the Salahuddin Road. According to reports, it was made up of factories and rocket preparing sites above and below ground. Dozens of tunnel entrances were located in the area as well, reportedly connecting to a tunnel grid that ran hundreds of kilometers up and down the Gaza Strip and was used to transport weaponry and rockets throughout the Gaza Strip by Hamas. The exact location of this manufacturing area was not reported. However, according to different eyewitnesses and the IDF activity, it was likely located between the central camps, i.e. El Bureij, El Nuseirat, and the northern areas of the Mawasi refugee camp. Other news in the center of the Gaza Strip in the El Bureij refugee camp, substantial infrastructure belonging to Hamas's El Bureij brigade was taken over by the IDF today, including vast storages of funds, maps, as well as military equipment. Moving to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, in Han Yunis, major gun battles were reported in the southern parts of Han Yunis. The IDF reportedly stormed Hamas's Shuhada outpost in a combined attack with tanks and air bombardment, eventually taking it over after a long battle. Dozens of Hamas operatives were reported killed, and in the outpost substantial intelligence was found, as well as a lot of different weaponry. This is the most southern part of the Gaza Strip that the ground forces of the IDF have reached, and the IDF stated that over 40 Hamas operatives were killed in Han Yunis throughout the last 24 hours. Al-Qassam brigades in turn stated that today in Han Yunis the group managed to hit several IDF military vehicles with anti-tank missiles, confirming injuries of several IDF troops. In Rafah, there were substantial bombardments reported in the southern parts of the city. No specific information was given about which targets were bombed. Other news in the Gaza Strip. After reports yesterday that the IDF was operating near the Nasser hospital in Han Yunis and that a cemetery nearby was heavily excavated and bodies were dug up, today NBC reported that the IDF confirmed that it searched the cemetery for possible bodies of hostages that may have been buried there, and several of these were taken back to Israel for identification. According to the IDF, the bodies are going to be inspected, and if it turns out that they do not belong to hostages, they are going to be returned in a respectable manner. Other news, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant stated today that Hamas's main organizational structures in the northern Gaza Strip are destroyed, and that while there are still pockets of resistance, these are going to be dealt with on an individual basis, and that fighting is going to continue over time. However, we also recognize that there is no hermetic solution for such pockets of resistance, and this is simply going to require the IDF to stay in the area for a lot more time. However, related to this, a report came in today that Hamas is beginning to rebuild its northern brigades after they were destroyed by the different IDF operations. According to the reports, as the IDF is pulling forces out of the north, Hamas has been working to appoint new commanders and link together different forces from its different brigades, specifically the El-Shati Brigade, Sajaiya, and different Jabalia brigades. This report comes amidst warnings that the IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi gave Israeli political establishment last week, in which he stated that without a day-after strategy to maintain the successes of the IDF, Hamas is simply going to be able to rebuild itself, and the IDF is going to end up having to go back again into the areas that it has already taken over and cleared, because without any strategy to maintain IDF successes, Hamas is simply going to rebuild itself over time. Regarding casualties, no IDF soldiers are reported killed in the last 24 hours. The number of IDF soldiers that are killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began remains 193. 26 IDF soldiers are reported injured in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. The Palestinian Health Ministry is reporting 172 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians that were killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 24,620. 61,830 Palestinians are reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began, and there are still several thousands that are buried under the rubble and presumed dead. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, telecommunications in the Gaza Strip are still down. This is now 6 days in a row that there is no telephone, cell phone, or internet services throughout most parts of the Gaza Strip. The Paltel company, that is the main telecommunications company in the Gaza Strip, stated that this failure is a result of communication lines that were damaged in Khan Yunis, however also added that repairs cannot take place due to the ongoing fighting. Other news related to the humanitarian situation, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke today to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and emphasized the need to increase humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. A total of 98 trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies are reported to have entered the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. That report was made by the United Nations. And finally, a report related to the humanitarian situation, there are more reports of spreading hepatitis A across the different refugee camps in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. The latest report of the Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip states that over 8,000 cases of hepatitis A have been reported, and that this spreading is continuing very rapidly due to very poor sanitation and hygiene conditions in the refugee camps. Moving on to the West Bank, substantial IDF activity was reported throughout various different parts of the West Bank. The operation the IDF carried out in Tulkarem reportedly lasted over 40 hours. Hundreds of structures and buildings were searched, uncovering substantial weaponry and explosive charges. Engineering units also reportedly uncovered a lot of roadside bombs and explosives that were planted under the roads. According to different reports, excavating and uncovering these bombs involved destroying large parts of the road infrastructure around Tulkarem and specifically in Tulkarem's refugee camp. In this operation, a total of 8 Palestinians were reported killed. This includes those who were reported yesterday, and 15 are reported arrested. Other IDF activity was reported in areas of Kalkilia, El Arub, as well as in the villages of Karmala, Na'alin, and Husan that are near Bethlehem. 21 Palestinians were reported arrested throughout the West Bank in the last 24 hours, not including those in Tulkarem, and 1 IDF soldier is reported injured in these different operations. Other news related to the West Bank, the United States is reportedly working on a formula wherein the tax money that is being held by Israel that is destined for the Palestinian Authority will be transferred to a third-party country, the reports say Norway, in full amount, and the portion that is destined for the West Bank will be transferred to the Palestinian Authority, while the portion that is supposedly destined for the Gaza Strip, which Israel is refusing to transfer, will remain in custody of Norway, under the auspices of Israel, ensuring that it does not get transferred to the Palestinian Authority. According to the reports, Minister of Finance in Israel, Bezalel Smotrich, who is the main holdup to transferring the funds to the Palestinian Authority, may accept this deal. However, I will add that it is unclear if the Palestinian Authority will accept this deal. The Palestinian Authority has stated that it will not accept any transfer of the funds except the full amount. Israel in turn said it was only willing to transfer the amount that was destined for the West Bank. This has been a stalemate since October 7th. The Palestinian Authority is reportedly on the brink of bankruptcy, with many of its law enforcement and bureaucrats not being paid for several months. Right now, this stalemate continues. This report may develop into a breakthrough. It may not. Remains to be seen. Other news, in a tour of the West Bank Border Police headquarters today, Minister of National Security in Israel, Itamar Ben-Gvir, stated, and I quote, "You have all the backing from me. When you are in mortal danger and see a terrorist, even if he is not endangering you, shoot." Ben-Gvir afterwards put out a statement stating that his words were misquoted, however still stating that he calls upon Israeli security forces to shoot armed Palestinians even before they are shot at. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon and Syria, there were substantial barrages of rockets and missiles sent from Lebanon, targeting different areas of Israel today. These targeted the areas of Shtula, Malachia, Manara, and Hardov. There were also anti-tank missiles that were sent towards the Adamit and Arab al-Ramsha areas in the western Galilee. Regarding IDF retaliations, IDF warplanes attacked areas in Itaron and in Al-Adaisa areas, targeting Hezbollah infrastructure and different launching sites. Other IDF retaliations were reported in the Kila village and Marj Ayun. El Miadin, which is a Hezbollah affiliate, reported that the IDF also attacked in Al-Adaisa and Al-Atiba, and that those attacks were very severe in their strength compared to usual IDF retaliations. Other news, officials in Lebanon stated that Hezbollah officially rejected two proposals that were delivered by the U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein last week. According to reports, one of these proposals was that Hezbollah and Israel will scale down the intensity of their attacks, as the intensity in the Gaza Strip scales down as well. The other deal was an agreement to push Hezbollah north only 7 kilometers from the border, rather than all the way north of the Litani, which is actually what UN Resolution 1701 demands. According to reports, Hezbollah rejected both of these. However, it acknowledged that it is willing to negotiate and did not just slam the door on any future negotiations. Other political news, Minister Eisenkot, who is a member of Benny Gantz's party and a member of the War Cabinet, stated today that in the War Cabinet, him and Benny Gantz stopped Israel from making a serious mistake in launching a preemptive strike against Hezbollah. According to what he stated, the War Cabinet wanted to launch this preemptive strike early in the war. However, they stopped Israel from doing that. And he added, if this would have happened, this would have fulfilled Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip's vision for a multi-front war, because that would have led to an all-out war both in Lebanon and in the Gaza Strip. Other news in Syria, there was a rocket barrage sent from Syria targeting the Golan Heights today. The Syrian Human Rights Observatory stated that over 10 rockets were launched by an organization that is affiliated with Hezbollah. According to the IDF, 3 of these rockets managed to enter the areas of Israel, and 7 of them landed in Syria. The IDF retaliated with missiles against an area west of Dara in southern Syria. Moving on to the regional developments, UKMTO reported that 4 drones surrounded a U.S.-owned tanker 140 kilometers off the Al-Mulha area in Yemen. These drones were reportedly either attack drones or surveillance drones that were sent by the Houthis. There was no report made regarding the actual outcome of these drones. Later, the Houthi spokesperson stated that a U.S. ship was attacked. However, no report was actually made by the United States or UKMTO if this ship was actually attacked and damaged. In other news, the U.S. reported that it carried out another attack against Houthi missiles that were primed and ready to launch, targeting 2 of them and stating that they were getting ready to launch against one of the ships in the areas. Other news related to Iraq, another armed drone was reportedly shot down around the Erbil airport in northern Iraq. Erbil airport is an area that is in the semi-autonomous region of Kurdistan, and it is an area that is heavily populated by different U.S. troops. It was a target of the Iranian attack several days ago. Yesterday it was reported that an armed drone was seen in the area and shot down. Today another armed drone was seen in the area and reportedly shot down. Moving on to some of the political and general trends from the last 24 hours, relating to the political turmoils that are going on in Israel, asked about them today, Prime Minister Netanyahu stated that going to elections in Israel would be irresponsible, would damage the war effort, and he added, and I quote, "Those who wish for that, and all other things we hear in the newsrooms, are Hamas and Iran, but we will not give them that." Other political news, the EU today put out a call which was originally designed to state the call for an unconditional ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. However, eventually, due to different political negotiations and heavy pressure from Israel, it was eventually amended and called for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip on the condition of releasing all hostages and dismantling Hamas. Other political news, Mexico and Chile both appealed to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, to request an investigation of crimes committed in the war between Israel and Hamas. According to Mexico's Foreign Office, the ICC is the right forum to determine criminal responsibility, adding that they're asking for an investigation into criminal responsibility for war crimes that were committed during this war, whether they were committed either by the occupying or the occupied forces. Other political news, Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong today was visiting the West Bank and met with Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Ashtiya. She expressed deep concern over the increased settler violence that has been seen in the West Bank since October 7th. Moving on to the future of the Gaza Strip. Financial Times reported today that under the auspices of the United States, different Arab states are working on an initiative to secure a complete ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and a release of all hostages as part of a broader plan to, quote, completely reshape the Middle East. According to reports, part of this plan is offering Israel complete normalization with a series of critical Arab countries, chief among them Saudi Arabia, in exchange for irreversible steps towards creating a Palestinian state. So this is part of the United States regional plan to both bring Saudi Arabia but also different Gulf countries into the a deal with Israel in order to, on the one hand, get a complete hostage release and bring about a ceasefire, but on the other hand, entice Israel with complete normalization and moving towards, again, a new Middle East. Relating to this, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller stated today that there's no way to solve Israel's long-term security problems and to arrange rebuilding Gaza without the establishment of a Palestinian state. He added that this is a unique opportunity at this moment, as other regional countries are willing to intervene and offer Israel security guarantees that it has never had the opportunity to get before. Relating to all this, and responding to an NBC report yesterday that the United States is beginning to work on a plan to bypass Netanyahu for the day after Netanyahu plan, the Prime Minister Netanyahu today spoke at a press conference. He was asked about this and he stated, and I quote, "I don't know what was said to different politicians in Israel, but whoever talks about the day after Netanyahu is talking about the day of establishing a Palestinian state with the Palestinian Authority. And I want to tell you that that is not the day after Netanyahu, that is the day after most Israeli citizens." He added, and I continue to quote, "I clarify that in any foreseeable agreement, Israel must control all the territory west of the Jordan River. It is a basic condition, and it collides with the idea of sovereignty," i.e. referring to Palestinian sovereignty and Palestinian statehood. He continued, "What can we do? I say to the Americans, and I said to the Americans, an Israeli Prime Minister must be able to say no, even to our best friends, to say no when you need to, and to say yes when you can." Responding to this, Netanyahu's statement was belittled later by U.S. officials in CNN, stating that if every hawkish statement made by Netanyahu was the final word, there would also have been no humanitarian aid ever entering Gaza, since at the beginning of the war Netanyahu said that no aid would enter Gaza, and no hostages would have been released, since Netanyahu also said that there would be no hostage exchange and no truce, and that the hostages would only be released through the acts of war. Other news, there are reports today of extreme and growing frustration within the Biden administration of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and that officials are identifying that Prime Minister Netanyahu is dragging out the war and deliberately not focusing on the hostages as a mechanism of prolonging the war, refusing to discuss the day after plan and only saying that the only thing to focus on is the war, and the war has no end date. According to the report, Biden's advisors are recommending that he publicly state that he supports Israel unconditionally and the Israeli people unwaveringly, however that he has lost faith in Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the sources are saying that they are pressuring Biden to give the statement already next month. I will add that this is likely tied into the fact that it is an election year in the United States, and the situation in Israel, and the complete lack of a ceasefire and some sort of vision for the end of the war is something that is going to start pressuring President Biden as the elections come closer. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.